Adrian Westbrook used to be known as a top-tier CEO. He ran a multi-million-dollar tech company, had global clients, and his name carried weight in business circles. People followed his career because he delivered results. He made decisions quickly, and most of them worked. There were no public scandals. No personal chaos. Everything about his life looked structured from the outside. That changed after the car crash. It was a business trip like many before. He'd just left a meeting and was headed back to his hotel. Heavy rain made the road slick. A truck driver lost control and slammed into Adrian's car at an intersection. The collision crushed the front of his vehicle and caused severe injuries to his spine. The reports were clear: spinal damage, possible paralysis, a long recovery ahead. He spent the first few weeks in the hospital, undergoing surgeries and tests. For a man who had never taken a sick day in years, the sudden halt was sharp. His team managed the business in his absence. A board member was named interim CEO. Investors were told he'd return once he recovered. But recovery didn't happen quickly. When Adrian was transferred to a rehabilitation center, it was clear he wouldn't be back at work anytime soon. He couldn't stand. He couldn't move his legs. Basic activities required assistance. Nurses came and went. Therapists rotated in and out of his schedule. Some treated him like a high-profile case, others like another patient on the list. Then one day, Emily joined the care team. She wasn't overly friendly. She didn't ask about his company. She showed up, read the chart, and started following his daily care plan. Morning routine, exercises, reports to the medical team. She was consistent, punctual, and didn't offer sympathy. Adrian appreciated that. At first, they barely spoke. Emily focused on her tasks. Adrian kept his responses short. There wasn't much to say. Days were repetitive. Wake up. Therapy. Meals. Rest. More therapy. Eventually, though, he noticed she didn't treat him like a public figure. She didn't adjust her tone when he mentioned business topics or meetings. When he talked about his board taking over, she only asked if he wanted help setting up video calls. She didn't press him for details. Over time, Adrian observed her routines. She always kept notes. She was organized. She followed instructions. She anticipated what he needed before he asked. When his back brace needed adjusting, she didn't wait for the request. When his therapist was late, she rescheduled without needing his input. He began to rely on her without meaning to. There were small improvements in his condition. He regained some feeling in his legs. Movement was slow, but it returned. The rehab team monitored progress. Each week they made small adjustments. Emily stayed involved in every step. She updated charts, discussed protocols, and followed every instruction. She worked like someone who understood process, not someone looking for attention. Other staff rotated out. Some left. But Emily stayed. Adrian started involving her more in daily planning. She organized his calls. She helped him go over reports. She didn't make suggestions unless asked. He appreciated that. His recovery didn't move fast, but it moved steadily. He regained upper body strength, then partial leg mobility. He began short sessions with walkers and braces. Some days he progressed. Some days he didn't. Emily kept the same routine either way. When the media caught wind of his recovery, the press began speculating about his return. Articles questioned whether he could regain his position or if the board had already moved on. Adrian didn't respond publicly. He focused on his therapy. Emily handled his schedule and didn't comment on the news. She cleared his appointments, blocked spam calls, and managed deliveries. She worked like someone who understood how to protect his time. After a few months, Adrian regained enough mobility to walk short distances with support. His medical team noted significant improvement. He resumed more business communication and began reviewing company documents regularly. During this time, Adrian kept Emily on his personal team. Not as a nurse, but as a private assistant. He made the request formally. She accepted without fuss. No long discussion. Just a shift in job description. She adapted easily. Now she handled business correspondence too. She arranged meetings, screened contacts, and coordinated with his legal team. She didn't ask about his decisions or question his orders. She followed instructions and handled issues before they became problems. At no point did she ask about bonuses, contracts, or favors. She never brought up their working relationship outside of logistics. When people asked about her role, she said she was part of his support staff and nothing more. Adrian noticed how people treated her. Some board members dismissed her presence. Others ignored her completely. But she didn't seem to mind. She stayed professional and efficient. As the months passed, Adrian's recovery continued. He was now able to walk short distances unaided. His doctors updated his file. His therapists increased his load. His advisors recommended preparing a public statement about his return. He agreed. Meanwhile, Emily continued working without changing her tone or attitude. She booked the venue for his press announcement. She coordinated travel. She created a summary of all board changes that occurred during his recovery. She kept things moving. And that's what stood out to him. She wasn't emotional. She didn't seek recognition. She didn't push her way into his life. She did her job. Reliably. Every day. In a year that had stripped everything familiar away from him, her presence had remained the same. And that, more than anything, earned his trust. Adrian Westbrook's routine became predictable. He woke up early, completed his therapy exercises, reviewed reports from his company, and managed scheduled calls. His condition had improved. He was now walking short distances with the help of a brace and using a cane. The doctors called it a strong recovery, ahead of expectations. Emily was still part of his daily schedule. She handled logistics, medical follow-ups, emails, meeting arrangements, and travel preparations. Since her transition from caregiver to assistant, her role expanded but her behavior remained the same. She worked without questions or unnecessary commentary. Adrian used her support to manage his workload more efficiently. She understood his preferences. She didn't interfere with strategy meetings or corporate decisions. She organized his day with minimal disruptions. After his recovery became public knowledge, media attention increased. Business outlets speculated about his return to leadership. Some believed the board wouldn't reinstate him. Others anticipated a power shift once he re-entered the company's decision-making structure. Internally, the board remained polite but cautious. Adrian had regained enough strength to attend virtual meetings, and he began reviewing quarterly reports again. Shareholders responded positively to his presence, which pressured the board to allow him more influence. Emily coordinated everything. She handled security details for his re-entry. She managed confidential documents and fielded calls from legal advisors. When Adrian held preliminary meetings to evaluate operations, she made sure all materials were delivered on time. There was no discussion between them beyond schedules, files, and task lists. Then, one afternoon, Adrian received a message from Isabel. Isabel had been his girlfriend before the accident. Their relationship ended quietly a few months into his hospitalization. There were no dramatic breakups or confrontations, just distance and silence. He hadn't heard from her in over a year. The message was simple: "I heard you're walking again. I'm glad. Would you like to meet sometime?" Adrian didn't reply immediately. He focused on finishing his call with his legal team. But the message stayed at the top of his inbox. 3 days later, he responded. He and Isabel met at a private lounge. She was familiar, same polished tone, same self-assured posture. They exchanged updates. She'd been working abroad. He mentioned the company, recovery, therapy. She congratulated him. Said she was surprised but impressed by his progress. Afterward, he returned to his residence and reviewed documents. Emily had left a note on his desk about the next board meeting and upcoming travel plans. She didn't ask about the meeting with Isabel. Over the following weeks, Adrian and Isabel met a few more times. Brief conversations. Dinners in quiet locations. Isabel asked about his future at the company, about his plans now that he could walk again. She offered ideas, names of consultants, new investors. Adrian didn't commit to anything. He observed. He listened. Meanwhile, Emily's work remained consistent. She maintained his files, scheduled therapy sessions, followed up with internal staff, and made sure every meeting ran on time. Nothing changed in her routine. Adrian's health improved further. He no longer needed daily therapy. He could now walk unassisted in short intervals. His doctors cleared him for independent living, with periodic check-ins. The physical limitations were still there, but they were manageable. He moved out of the rehab facility and into a new condo. Emily arranged the move. She labeled each box, coordinated furniture deliveries, and prepared a secure work setup. One day, after reviewing documents for the next quarter, Adrian informed Emily that Isabel would be joining him at a corporate dinner. Emily acknowledged the update. She confirmed the reservation and arranged transportation. She also compiled a guest list and created briefing notes. That night, Isabel made an impression. She still had connections in the investment world. Several board members seemed pleased to see her by Adrian's side. Photos from the event circulated online. Headlines speculated about their reconciliation. Emily came in the next day with a list of follow-ups. She didn't mention the photos. A week later, Adrian asked her to reduce her hours. He said his recovery no longer required full-day assistance and that he was streamlining his staff. She nodded and adjusted her schedule. There was no reaction or resistance. She finished her tasks before leaving that day, documents sorted, contacts updated, a folder prepared for next week's flight. Adrian's days became quieter. Isabel started accompanying him to public events. They were seen together more often. The media labeled them as rekindled. Investors reacted positively. One morning, during a strategy meeting, Adrian confirmed to the board that he was returning as CEO officially. The vote passed. He regained full control. Emily delivered the press release draft later that afternoon. Adrian made a few adjustments. She sent the final version out. Afterward, she handed over her resignation letter. No explanation. Just a clean, dated letter, effective in 2 weeks. Adrian accepted it. He didn't ask why. She didn't explain. For the next 2 weeks, Emily continued with her usual professionalism. She closed her tasks, transferred data, and trained her replacement. Her last day came and went without disruption. She left a final note on his desk. No goodbye. No message. Just an organized handover file. Adrian's recovery was complete. His company was back under his control. And the girl who helped him get there, quietly, was gone. Adrian Westbrook returned to his position as CEO with full authority. His transition back into corporate leadership was accepted without significant resistance. The board acknowledged his improved condition and past contributions. Shareholders responded positively to the news. Media coverage was favorable, calling it a comeback story. Within the first few weeks, Adrian held internal restructuring meetings. He reviewed performance reports, reassessed department leads, and initiated reviews for outdated contracts. He signed off on proposals that had been pending since his leave. Projects that were paused during his recovery were put back into motion. His team was reorganized. A few executive roles were reassigned. New advisors were hired. A management consultant was brought in to recommend efficiency models. Isabel joined some of these meetings, often offering insight or recommendations based on her time in corporate consulting. She didn't have an official title, but she attended frequently. Internally, some employees asked whether she would be joining the company formally. No official response was given. Emily's name wasn't mentioned. By then, she had completed her transition out of the company. Her replacement handled logistics and scheduling, though Adrian adjusted his work style after her departure. He delegated most scheduling to his executive assistant and shifted his focus entirely to strategy and board relations. 3 months after his return, Adrian finalized a new 5-year roadmap for the company. It was announced through a press release and presented at an investor summit. He delivered the keynote speech himself, walking onto the stage without assistance. The video was shared widely. Isabel stood in the crowd during the presentation. Later that evening, they attended a private dinner with investors and key clients. A photograph of them leaving the venue was published the next morning in a business magazine. Adrian's public image was re-established. Analysts referred to him as recovered, restructured, and refocused. His quarterly reports showed consistent profits. Investor confidence stabilized. Stock performance reflected the regained momentum. One morning, a formal announcement was made. Adrian and Isabel were engaged. The statement was short. It mentioned no date, only that the engagement was confirmed. Comments online varied, some surprised, others congratulatory. Internally, operations continued. Adrian's new staff functioned as expected. Documents were filed properly. Meetings ran on time. Deadlines were met. But his work process had changed. Where Emily had previously streamlined and preemptively resolved issues, his current team followed instructions but rarely acted ahead of time. Adrian adjusted. He made more direct calls. He began overseeing certain workflows personally, something he hadn't done in years. There was no complaint. He had the capacity and authority to make it work. Occasionally, a few staff members who had worked with Emily would mention her name when referencing old processes. Adrian never responded. He acknowledged the feedback, made the necessary change, and moved forward. 6 months after his reinstatement, Adrian's team organized a charity event. The guest list included major investors, public officials, and press. Isabel oversaw the event design and guest coordination. Her approach was formal and structured. The event ran without issues. During the evening, Adrian gave a speech highlighting the company's recovery, new initiatives, and upcoming expansion. He concluded with remarks about second chances, endurance, and rebuilding. The audience applauded. The event made headlines for its organization and for showcasing the CEO's transformation. Isabel was praised for her contribution. A full-page spread in a magazine titled "The Power Couple Behind the Comeback" featured them together. The narrative was now clear. Adrian Westbrook had rebuilt his life and career, and Isabel had returned to his side. No one asked about the year before. Adrian maintained a strict public schedule. He limited interviews. When asked about his recovery, he answered with general remarks about discipline and medical support. He didn't mention names. 2 quarters later, the company reported record profits. New markets had opened. Partnerships were growing. Industry rankings placed his firm in the top 5 for innovation and expansion. He signed 3 new international contracts, secured a merger, and launched a recruitment drive. During that time, Adrian's personal life became more visible. Isabel began giving interviews. She spoke about her career and their upcoming wedding. Some articles referred to her as a strategic partner, though she still held no official title at the company. A press photo of them standing outside corporate headquarters was widely shared. Adrian was back in the spotlight. Meanwhile, Emily's name never appeared in the news. No mention was made of her contribution during his recovery. No interviews. No features. No quotes. Adrian didn't bring her up in any of his discussions, public or private. Internally, there were no references to her work. New staff managed day-to-day tasks based on new systems. Old schedules were archived. Former protocols were rewritten. Her absence was treated as neutral. One day, during a team meeting, a junior staff member suggested reintroducing a system Emily had created to improve task tracking. The idea was dismissed and replaced with a new model presented by an outside consultant. Later, Adrian reviewed the tracking system quietly in his office. He didn't reinstate it. He closed the file and moved on. His days returned to full capacity. Board meetings, leadership summits, product launches, investor calls. Isabel became more active in managing event logistics and travel. There were no major disruptions. Business remained steady. Adrian Westbrook had resumed life at full speed. His company had recovered. His health had stabilized. His future was structured again. The past was no longer referenced. And the person who stood by during the time no one else did, was nowhere in that future. Adrian Westbrook was operating at full capacity. The days were precise. Meetings stacked. Mornings early. International calls bridged across time zones like clockwork. There were no loose ends, just quarterly goals, satisfied shareholders, and a calendar that rarely showed white space. The company had survived its storm. Reorganized. Refocused. Resilient. And standing next to him now, always camera-ready, always composed, was Isabel. She wasn't just his fiancée. She was part of the brand. Coordinated appearances. Smiles angled just right. She had no official title, but her presence was felt at every gala, every board dinner, every media event. They were called a power couple in the press. Adrian didn't object. He let the narrative run on its own momentum. Then came the leadership conference. The theme, overcoming setbacks. Adrian delivered what was expected: slides on talent retention, business continuity, future-proofing strategy. No personal references. No names. Just performance metrics. And a quote about resilience. Applause. Exit. Done. But afterward, someone approached him. A woman from his early startup days. A former intern. They exchanged updates, polite, quick. Then she said something that lingered. "I remember the girl who used to assist you during rehab. She was always the one keeping everything on track." Adrian didn't respond. Just nodded. But the name, Emily, was never spoken. That was the first time in over a year anyone had brought her up. Later that evening, alone in his office, he opened an old email thread. Emily's checklists. Her formatting. Her timelines. The execution, flawless. Every stage of his recovery mapped, managed, invisible to the world but crucial to its structure. He scrolled for a few minutes. Then closed it. Didn't save. Didn't reply. Didn't linger. Just deleted the draft window. The next morning, Isabel sent him the final engagement dinner schedule. A restricted guest list. Corporate sponsor seating. Pre-approved menu. Photographer slots. No detail unplanned. Adrian signed off without edits. That evening, the dinner unfolded with precision. Toasts. Speeches. Thank you remarks. No emotion. No missteps. No mention of the past. Just the image, flawless. The following week, he received an invitation. A small nonprofit was hosting a Tech for Rehab conference. They said his recovery story had helped shape new care models. They asked him to speak. He declined. Marked the email as handled. Nothing more. But days later, something unexpected landed in his inbox. A forwarded clip. It was Emily. Now working at a nonprofit, designing logistical systems for outpatient care. Her name was in the article. Her face, professional but familiar. There were no references to Adrian. No mention of where she had once worked. She had moved on. And so had he, at least, externally. He archived the email. Didn't comment. Isabel brought up the wedding timeline shortly after. She had already shortlisted venues. Begun the paperwork. Built the design deck. Adrian agreed to her choices. Gave the go-ahead. They chose a private estate. Limited access. Controlled media. The wedding came and went. A few official photos were released. No vows published. No press interviews granted. The coverage focused on the dress. The setting. The guest list. Everything else? Omitted. Back at the company, things continued scaling. Awards came in. Recruitment stayed strong. A new operational framework was installed, automated scheduling, AI-driven workflow. The old system, the one Emily had fine-tuned, was officially decommissioned. He approved the shift. There were minor bugs, duplicated entries, scheduling overlaps, but nothing critical. He corrected them. Quietly. No one brought up the previous system. No one mentioned how seamless it had once been. 6 months later, the wedding happened. Private. Secluded. Strategically managed. The next morning, Adrian reviewed the quarterly update. Joined a live investor call. Business resumed, no pause, no reflection. In time, Isabel stepped out of the spotlight. Citing creative projects. Personal travel. Adrian didn't protest. He focused on expanding overseas, launching a global satellite in Asia. During logistics prep, a delay occurred. Someone had missed a step in the scheduling chain. Adrian reviewed the flow chart. This used to be done 3 steps earlier, he noted. No one replied. He corrected it. Moved on. One day, mid-flight, he was reviewing a document layout when a file caught his eye. Tag, Old Standard M. His finger hovered over it. But he didn't open it. He deleted the tag. Continued reading. No names were mentioned again. No files revisited. Her systems, once the backbone of his recovery, were now erased, replaced, optimized. His company was stable. His image was intact. His life, redesigned. And the person who helped build it all behind the curtain, quietly, selflessly, left with no title, no credit, no trace. She never asked to be remembered. And he made sure not to. After the wedding, Adrian Westbrook's routine remained unchanged. His calendar was optimized to prioritize growth operations, partnerships, and the next fiscal expansion. Isabel traveled intermittently but no longer attended executive sessions. There was no public announcement of her role beyond spouse. Internally, business remained on track. KPIs were met. Revenue targets were surpassed for the 2nd consecutive quarter. Adrian led high-level negotiations with 2 international investors. Both contracts were closed successfully within 30 days. Meanwhile, his operations team transitioned completely to a platform-based model. Most team leads now reported through an internal portal. Executive summaries were handled by his chief of staff. Adrian preferred concise documentation, slide-based updates, and brief in-person syncs. One day, while preparing materials for a quarterly report, a former department coordinator referenced a logistical template that predated the current system. It was an efficiency tracker that had been phased out during restructuring. Adrian reviewed the file briefly. He made no comment. The format was clear, more manual, but detail-oriented. He returned the document with a note, use current system format. Archive old. The exchange ended there. His physical health remained stable. He attended quarterly medical checkups. A fitness coach maintained his mobility routine, and a part-time trainer was assigned to assist him during travel. His back brace was still in use for long flights, but no complications were reported. One evening, after a meeting with procurement leads, Adrian returned home and reviewed a news article forwarded by a contact. Emily had received recognition from a national healthcare body for her contribution to adaptive outpatient systems. She had spoken on a panel titled, Quiet Efficiency, Designing Patient-Centered Recovery Protocols. Her presentation focused on post-trauma workflow management. No names were mentioned. No photos of past employment. No direct reference to Adrian or his company. The article included a quote, "The goal was always functionality. If it works quietly and consistently, that's success." Adrian closed the tab. The next morning, he met with his product division head to discuss interface changes to a legacy platform. A feedback loop from beta testers had indicated inconsistencies in the alert system. Adrian reviewed the screenshots and approved a patch release. Later that afternoon, he received a handwritten envelope delivered through private courier. The sender was Emily. Inside was a single folded page. The message was brief. "I won't contact you again after this. Just wanted to say, I wasn't waiting. I was just doing my job. That's all I ever intended. Adrian read it once. He did not respond. He shredded the note, cleared his desk, and joined a call with his legal advisor regarding upcoming licensing negotiations. 3 weeks later, a former senior nurse from the rehabilitation center reached out through a third-party email with a proposal for a corporate-funded mobility grant. The proposal highlighted partnerships with several names, including Emily's organization. Adrian marked the file as pending review. 2 days passed. Then, he forwarded it to his philanthropy division with the instruction, assess merit. Remove name associations. The grant was eventually approved under a neutral initiative title. Internally, no links were made. Public statements described the fund as part of Adrian's broader healthcare commitment. Another season passed. Adrian's company launched its first automated service hub overseas. Expansion numbers were solid. The board issued a unanimous vote of approval for his third consecutive term as CEO. At a press briefing, when asked about the most critical component in leadership recovery, Adrian responded, "Continuity." The next morning, a journalist requested clarification. The question was whether his definition of continuity referred to people or systems. Adrian responded through his media representative, "Systems survive. People move on." No further elaboration was provided. The quote appeared in multiple business publications. Back in the office, his executive assistant reminded him of his flight to New York for a regional tech summit. Adrian packed only essentials, reviewed his notes on the plane, and delivered his address the following morning. The speech focused on scalability. He explained how systems should work without individual dependency, how operations should be transferable. He emphasized structure over sentiment, efficiency over attachment. No part of the speech referenced his recovery year. No names from that time appeared in any slide. The event ended as planned. During the return flight, Adrian reviewed notes from a team-building survey his HR department had conducted. One section asked employees to describe what made leadership effective. The top answer, clarity of direction. He underlined the phrase. Then he closed the document. That weekend, Adrian returned home and updated his personal archive. He removed several backup drives from his cloud system. Some of them included old document versions, memos, task trackers, calendar notes. A few had Emily's filename tags in the metadata. He deleted the drives. No backups were retained. Later that month, Adrian declined an interview from a magazine writing a feature on unsung corporate contributors. The journalist asked to speak about lesser-known staff during his recovery period. His response was short, not applicable. The article ran without his input. Business performance remained strong. Public opinion was steady. No challenges to his authority surfaced internally or externally. The past stayed out of view. And the woman who had once managed every task, prepared every file, and built every system without attention, remained fully erased from the official record. 12 months after Adrian Westbrook resumed control of his company, operations were fully aligned with projected growth. International branches reported stable expansion. The core leadership team had been restructured to reflect new priorities. Most of the executives in place were either hired post-recovery or promoted after the previous management shift. The company had entered 3 new markets. A partnership with an AI logistics firm further reduced operational cost. Profit margins widened. Analysts projected sustained growth for the next 6 quarters. Adrian's calendar remained structured. His daily schedule left no room for discretionary activity. Meetings were strictly timed. Documentation was digitized, filtered, and summarized. His involvement in every area remained high level. Strategy execution was assigned to his COO and department heads. He did not travel without reason. He did not attend social events without strategic value. His public statements were limited to product releases or financial reporting. At home, he maintained a minimal routine. Isabel managed public-facing appearances when needed but had largely stepped back from day-to-day exposure. She had started a private consulting firm. Adrian neither objected nor participated. Their marriage was categorized by external observers as quietly functional. Internally, he received periodic requests to reflect on his recovery year. Nonprofits, authors, and foundations reached out seeking commentary. All were declined. The official company version of that period was logged as medical leave, under private care, full return in Q3. No names were included. No support staff were referenced. No caregiver acknowledgement was listed in any public or internal document. The archive for that year contained only logistics. No personal files. No off-record memos. No traces of the person who managed his daily function during that time. One day, while reviewing an HR performance audit, Adrian came across a recommendation for a staff recognition module. The suggested feature included a quiet contribution tag, a way to acknowledge employees who supported leadership without public visibility. He reviewed the concept. He removed the tag and revised the wording to support efficiency flag. The HR system update went live the following week. At a board retreat, Adrian presented a case study on succession planning. The presentation emphasized removing single-point dependencies. It highlighted how even critical staff should be replaceable through structured onboarding and system documentation. One of the slides included a bullet: if a system collapses when one person leaves, it wasn't a system. No one questioned the point. The next quarter passed without incident. The company's product development arm won an industry award. Adrian did not attend the ceremony. A regional director accepted on his behalf. During that time, he received a letter through corporate mail channels. No return address. It was unsigned. The content was one sentence: "I hope the system works without the person." He read it. He didn't respond. The letter was shredded and discarded. Later, during a keynote roundtable, Adrian was asked what had changed most during his leadership journey. He answered, "I learned that people are variable. Systems are not." The audience noted it as a concise leadership philosophy. It was quoted in 2 business columns. No reference was made to anyone from his personal history. By the second year post-recovery, the company celebrated its highest valuation to date. Press coverage focused on innovation, efficiency, and digital transformation. Adrian's name returned to the top 10 of a business leadership index. His recovery was described as strategic, not personal. In a closed-door meeting, a new board member asked if Adrian credited any individual with the stability during his medical leave. Adrian replied, "Recovery was scheduled and executed. That's all that mattered." No follow-up questions were asked. Over time, the company phased out any documents tied to his rehabilitation phase. File names, folder references, and support logs were removed or merged into generic archives. There was no file marked Emily. No initials. No mention. The legacy system she once maintained had been fully overwritten. On the 4th anniversary of the accident, Adrian had no appointments. It was a weekend. His schedule showed personal block, 3 hours. No other context. He spent that time in his study, reviewing quarterly planning materials. There was no event. No visit. No conversation. The clock ran out. The hour passed. He returned to reviewing new merger opportunities with legal counsel. 3 days later, an internal report was filed regarding outdated templates on the internet. Adrian's signature was required to approve final deletion. He scanned the list. He selected delete all. Confirmed. No backup retained. No recovery path created. No audit log saved. The record was cleared. That was the final version. Nothing remained.